Hello and welcome to Life Beyond the Numbers, the podcast for people who are curious about how to have a more fulfilling work life. We live in a world largely driven by numbers, logic and reason. But how we feel at work and about our work impacts us, our organisations and society. There is a relationship between the numbers of our organisations and the life beyond the numbers. I'm Susan Migena, your host. I've lived and worked in many countries. I've met people who love what they do and people who don't, people who bring their full selves to work and people who won't. But one thing that I've learned that is common to us all is that we are all unique and have unique experiences. And it's helpful to know that there are others who think like we do, or have had struggles too, or have gone where we want to go, or can show us things we didn't know. So join me and my guests as we place a lens on the human side of work life by sharing insights, stories, and strategies to inspire you to let your uniqueness shine through. Well, today I am delighted to welcome Migena Gjerazi to Life Beyond the Numbers. Migena, you are so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. I'm excited. I'm grateful. I'm everything.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And Migena and I were introduced by the lovely Sam Allen, and Sam and I recorded an episode about reconnecting. Episode 120. I'll leave a link in the show notes. So thank you, Sam, if you're listening. And just before we hit record, the strangest thing ever happened. And I'm hoping it's a good omen, but these balloons came up into my Zoom screen from absolutely nowhere. I've never
That's
seen
a
anything.
lovely sign of celebration. So maybe this is a celebration moment.
This is a celebration. So hopefully we're saying there's no pressure on the conversation, but you know.
It started well. Let's say
It started well, absolutely. And Migena, I've been looking at your website and looking at you on LinkedIn, and one of the things that really stood out was you talking about personal vision and how our personal vision changes over the years. And it's important for us to recognize that, move with it, as opposed to against it. So maybe you talk a little bit about that and give us some examples of where your personal vision perhaps has changed.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful that you see it that way, because everybody reads differently of the same text. So I'm very happy that you have actually picked up on that. Yeah, personal vision is something that I'm quite passionate about working, because it's funny enough, I have changed a lot throughout my life. And also that vision has changed. So in a way, my life has also taught me not to be attached to just one thing. And that has been like a huge life lesson throughout the years. And also what I've noticed is that I actually, even though like change is the constant, right? We get to hear that all the time, like change is the constant. And somehow we're very resistant to change. And what I've learned throughout the years is also to embrace this and surrender and trust, which are huge words, and it's a huge work behind it. And I think that has been also my long life lesson to be learned, and still learning to surrender more and more to that. And also something else, coming back to that, you saying like the vision changing, is, to me, what is really important is, at the right moment, at this particular moment, am I in alignment with, am I in resonance with my values, with what I stand for, with actually what my heart beats for? You know, there is this excitement that I also go after, and which may sound a little bit woo-woo, but it's very much that joy. Like it's something that drives me. So what brings me that lightness? What brings me that joy? And going after it and trusting that also gut feeling that, okay, this feels good. So I don't know what's coming. And sometimes the vision is not clear. And it's okay. For me, that's what I've learned. It's okay that the vision is not clear, but the first step is clear. And I think that's really what I've learned to trust, knowing that, okay, I'm clear about the first step, and then the second step will show itself. And trusting that, okay, I will know at the end of the day what is right. And apparently I get a confirmation.
Oh my God. Zoom is obviously listening to our conversation because it just sent again a thumbs up, and I did not do anything. I swear, this is so weird.
We have other entities in the call, apparently, confirming stuff.
I'm not surrendering to that. I don't trust it, I'm afraid. I'm not embracing this new technology. But there are your words you've used there in that sentence, Migena: embrace, surrender, trust. And I wonder, what does it mean to surrender? What is surrender?
Oh, I'm still learning that. I'm really still learning that. Surrender for me, it goes very much with that trust, right? So in the sense that trusting that life has your back and that things happen. I always hear these things happen for a reason. Yes, to a certain degree, I believe that. And there is still something for me that is the free will as well. So things happen for a reason, and it's what you make up of those things as well. Like, how do you show up? Because life will happen, things will happen. So how do we, again, show up in those things? What choice do we have? What is it that we choose to do at all times? So I think it comes down to that choice. And linking it back to surrender is very much like, okay, this thing happened right now. Like, I trust that it is for my development, for my growth. You know, it comes also to mind now, that expression that I've learned in Orsk: what is good and what is bad? You know, all the time there is a story about it, like what's good and what's bad, right? Because something that at the moment might sound good, then it turns to be a blessing in disguise. Like at the moment, like 2 days ago, I've been diagnosed with Hashimoto thyroid disease, and my whole world turned upside down. And I'm still in that sphere, or still in that energy where I'm like, oh God, what's going on? Like, what is this about? And to me, just having these 2 days also to be with all the feelings, to be with everything in it, I'm realizing right now, yes, and maybe this is a wake-up call for me to take care of my health, to get a rest, to really have a radical change when it comes to all my body and all my health, because I've not been listening. I thought I was. But radically, there is some self-betrayal at some degree, which is very, very funny, because I think I have lived healthily, and I think I have heard, I've listened, but not to a deeper level.
Oh, Zoom, I'm really getting upset with Zoom here. Sorry, Migena, because it's interrupting my flow of thought and listening. And what you said, and I wonder, because you said thyroid, and thyroid is a hormone.
Yes.
And so I think we probably have less control over our hormones than we do a lot of the other things that go on in our body. Not that I'm a medical person at all, but it may not have been anything you were doing or not listening to as much as well. It may just be hormones, and they seem to have a mind of their own and a will of their own.
Absolutely. And this is an autoimmune disease.
Okay.
And I'm not a doctor, and I'm just learning about it. Yeah. And at the same time, there are things that we can always do, right, to help our body to live better, to live a healthy life, to listen. Because I feel I have quite a good connection with what's going on, and I've been feeling the need to rest, to reset, and I still push on. I still do things that I feel I shouldn't. I don't know if it's a pleaser thing, if it's a woman thing, if it's nowadays thing where you need to keep up with everything that's going on. So it's a lot of things. And still, I haven't been strong enough to say no to a lot of things.
Is it a habit? It's almost like, yeah, it's a pattern or a habit that to actually interrupt it, it's the perhaps saying no, which is often daunting, especially if you work for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. It's not only that, it's, I think, also because I work and I assume you work as well with something that we're very passionate about, right? And it's very hard, definitely, where you're in that flow, when you're really in that energy, it's like very hard to say, okay, stop now, you need to rest, because you don't realize it. It's just, you're there. And on top of that, I've also, for the last 3 months, been living in Albania, in my home country. And it's also what this need to be with people, to be with cousins, to be with family all the time. So there hasn't been much time where I have been on my own. And as a person, I do need time on my own. So, and I failed a little bit to set those boundaries, to take that time for myself, to take that rest. So that's where, I mean, I should have been a little bit better at saying no and set those boundaries and fulfill the needs that my body has and I have as a person.
So in a way, there's a constant checking in with ourselves, a constant
Absolutely.
vigilance that we need, no matter how well we think we're doing or how healthily we live. The change piece that you referred to earlier is always constant. So even if we've perfected our system of being in the world, we can't take that for granted, can we? We have to check in every now and then.
Absolutely.
And re-listen, or yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's imperative. It's
Yeah.
really imperative at all times to check in with self, because it's like that. If your cup is half empty or it's empty, you can't give anything from an empty cup. So we really need to be very cautious. Like, where is our cup? How filled is it at the moment? Like, where am I? How much am I spilling my energy, or how much am I filling my energy with the things that I'm doing?
Spilling or filling. I mean, that's just so beautiful. As a metaphor, it's really good. And actually, I love that. Looking at your Instagram account, you do a lot of oppositions. So spilling or filling, people pleaser, kind soul, backtasking, switch tasking, and a lot of opposites. And I think that's really helpful for us to situate ourselves in some of these situations. And I'd love to talk about some of those things as well.
Absolutely.
Maybe we could start with the one about responsibility and the difference between being responsible or taking responsibility.
Oh, that's beautiful. I remember I've written an article about that. So as I also said before, like, life happens, right? So it's important. And for me, leadership is also this. It's important how we show up in the world. So how much of this responsibility do you take in terms of this thing happen? What's the choice? How do you show up? How responsible are you, first, for the things that happen, and also second, which is, I think it's more important, it's like, what are you choosing to do about them, for the things that happen, right? And also, because what I've realized is very much like we love, some of us, not all of us, we love to blame, and we love to act as victims, that this thing happened to me. And I think, coming also from Albania, it's a cultural thing a little bit. I can notice it in the whole country, that we tend to have this kind of attitude and mindset, like things happen to us. And moving from Albania, it had become very clear that, hey, you have a responsibility. See how you're building, so how you're showing up, how you're creating the life that you're creating. That's the taking of responsibility and being responsible for what is it that you're creating. So that has also been a huge lesson for me. Instead of pointing fingers, it's turning those fingers around and saying, okay, what's my part in it, right?
Absolutely.
What is it that I'm choosing?
Absolutely. And I think you made a really interesting point there as well about culture and how different cultures may have manifested, I suppose, a different attitude. And I do think in Ireland, where I grew up, we certainly had something similar. And I often would have now, in hindsight, put that in a little bit to religion, because it's like when we went to church, we prayed for things to happen, and it was almost like God's will, or if God is willing. And it's almost like then not taking responsibility for your life, that actually my destiny is predetermined, so I might as well sit back and let it happen. And then if anything goes wrong, well, that was their fault.
Exactly. It's easy to blame others, right? Very easy.
And I'm not sure we're all aware that we have, or we can take responsibility. I think that's a really nice way of putting it, that we can take back some responsibility for ourselves. And it's not just what our bosses say, or what the leader says, or what my parents say, or the neighbors say. Actually, I have some say.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that when also clients get this aha moment, because as a coach, you're like a mirror. And when you play it back to them and you say, hey, and what's your responsibility in this? And that's where sometimes goes into the aha moment. And some they're also quite close, not wanting to see it. But I love it. And people are becoming even more and more aware nowadays to see how they're creating their own reality. And of course, we can't control everything. We can't control all the variables. So it is what it is. And the things we can control, it's very much like, how do we show up? Yeah, our attitude, our mindset, our choices.
And it brings freedom.
Definitely.
There's an expansiveness, even almost a relaxation about. Oftentimes we want to kind of not have responsibility, or too much responsibility at work and so on. But actually feeling responsible for yourself, I think, gives you just a bit more sense of freedom about, oh, I have a choice here.
Absolutely. I tend to be over responsible sometimes. And there is also a backside to that, in the sense of, you ignoring completely your own needs, and you ignoring of what's going on in your reality. And just because I have said yes to something, if I have 39 fever, sometimes I will still show up, which is stupid as well, because that's not doing anyone any good, right? So it's also about realizing sometimes, when am I being responsible? Definitely. And when there's a balance about being responsible. So I think there is also a backside to being overly responsible, like taking to extremes. Of course, it's never good.
Yeah. And what would you tell someone in that instance who showed up to you and said, I have a temperature of 39, and they're there for the meeting or whatever? You would say that is irresponsible, probably,
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's one of life's great paradoxes, I think, that we can see in others sometimes what we don't see in ourselves, or we excuse ourselves from certain behavior that we would never expect someone else to do.
Yeah, I think in that instance, because it just came to me, there is this value of loyalty. Definitely the value of responsibility, of course, but there is a value of loyalty, that I have given my word to you and I have committed to this, right? So it's also not to leave you down in a way, but first place, you leave yourself down because you didn't take care of yourself, right? So if you have 39 degree and you show up, yeah, you're letting yourself down.
You are, and you're not serving your client, and you're not serving yourself. Yeah, but you still feel like a hero.
Which is stupid. I know.
And I think we do this all the time. In workplaces, you go to work even when you're feeling ill because you don't want to let people down, or you have too much work on and all of that. And one of the things I always found fascinating myself was, if I was out for a week because I was practically like hospitalized by the time I left the office, you know.
The
But
world
then,
goes on.
yes, it so does. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Even if you cancel a client last minute, they might do something with that hour that actually changes their whole life as well.
Exactly. Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
So then, Migena, are you a people pleaser or a kind soul? And what's the difference?
It's very funny when I wrote that post. It's because I was getting so many of my clients that the main topic was pleasing. I am a recovered pleaser, and I still tend a little bit to go back to that pleasing attitude. And at some point, I found myself like educating my client versus pleasing and kind soul, because there's a very fine line, because people are very much like, yeah, but I do it because I love it and because I really want the best. And for me, that fine line is the agenda behind, first of all, and also the sacrifice that you're doing. Like, what is it that it's costing you to be that kind? Or because kind is lovely, like kindness is a beautiful thing, and we really need more of it in the world. And when it goes into the other lane is when you're really taking something, like sacrificing something out of yourself to do something for the others. And we might argue as well that that's also, like a very noble and humble thing. And at the same time, when you don't have the capacity, when you don't have the resources, when you really are giving from that empty cup, I think that's where it goes into the pleasing part. And sometimes there is also another another layer to it, that sometimes we pleasers, we also have an agenda, in the sense that even though it comes out as very unconditional, there are still some conditions. Like, we want something in return deep down, unconsciously. We don't realize it first moment that we do things. And at the same time, we want something out of it. Like, it can be some kind of validation. It can be the desire to be liked, the desire to be accepted, to belong, to be part of the group. Like, there are a lot of different reasons why we do when we're in a pleasing mode. And that's the distinction, I feel. The kindness comes really from a pure heart, from no agenda, from really this unconditionality that whatever I do to you, I do it with a full heart. And really, I would love to do it. And the pleaser that goes a little bit with an agenda.
Yeah, and a little bit, as you were speaking, a little bit of an unkindness towards yourself.
Yes, exactly. Very well seen, yeah.
Yeah, which is quite fascinating, isn't it? In that you're doing yourself a disservice again by, well, maybe you had an agenda and you're pleasing because you want something in return, but you're also maybe just feeling you can't let someone down and putting their needs ahead of your own when you don't need to. And actually, I found, and I find that if you say to somebody no, it's actually usually very accepted.
It is.
And you don't have to explain why or anything. I can't do this for you now, or I won't be able to make that. And people just accept that. And I suppose when we put a request out there for someone, we're never doing it so they'll go out of their own way for us. Or if you're able to say no for yourself, then you expect other people can too. And we can't really mind other people's boundaries. So we rely on people to tell us what they can and cannot do.
Absolutely. That's very true. Yeah.
And I think our workplaces are full of people who are people pleasers and who are afraid to say, no, I can't take on that work, or I can take it on next week or next month.
Yes, that would be amazing if they have the courage to do that. I think there is also another element to them, and maybe this doesn't only go for people pleasers, but the element of asking for help as well, which is a huge thing. For me, that was a huge learning. Especially, I remember in my leadership program together with Sam, we had this exercise, which was amazing. And it was all about to learn this skill of asking for help. And I don't know if I spoil actually the confidentiality of that program by telling the exercise, but I think, yeah, I can say it because everybody experiences differently. But it was a maze, and we were blindfolded, and we were given a rope to hold, and we needed to find the way out of this maze. And we were going around and around, and I remember that there was this hint in that one was coming and saying, it was like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And before we started this exercise, I remember one or two of my classmates, they were saying, oh, but I'm claustrophobic. And even though we were doing it outside, and then in the maze, I was hearing help, help. And in my mind, it was like, how many people are claustrophobic in this group? You know, that everybody's asking for help. I mean, I had no clue that that was the way out. Like, it didn't even cross my mind at all. It's so crazy, like at all, that asking for help was the way out. And I was one of the second last, only because the leaders came to pull me out. Because in my mind, it was like, and I was doing all kinds of acrobatics, and I even have videos, like, I just had to find the way out, because it cannot be that I cannot find the way out. You know, holding the rope and with my legs doing all kinds of movements. So it was really, really crazy. So that was a huge lesson. And from that, actually, I've learned how to ask for help more and more.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Yeah. It's like it is, and I can picture it clearly, because I'm sure I'd be the same. Well, maybe not now, but once upon a time. And I have a book here, Influence by Zoe Chance. I think influence is your superpower. And she says that one of the things that a lot of us were brought up to be self-sufficient and generous.
Exactly.
So we're very generous to give help or please, and sometimes we give help out of the goodness of our heart, but then we are very slow to ask for it.
Mm.
And the funny thing is, if anyone was to ask me for help, I would absolutely help if I could. And then, but I don't think that I can somehow then ask people for help. It's a crazy thing.
Yeah, that's the mindset shift that I've done with myself, because I know how much I love to help. Right. So the thing that I can keep telling to myself is like, you're denying others this joy to actually give you help, you know? So and when I started initially, it was like really baby steps, right? Like asking someone, can you give me some water? Or can you do this? Or so now it has gone to bigger things and help, like with workshops and trainings and everything. And it feels good. I can see the joy, not only to me, but also the people that are giving the help.
I love that. That's such a lovely way of thinking about it, that you're denying people that feeling of joy by not asking for help.
Yeah. And people have that choice to say no, right? That's the freedom.
That's the freedom. If you take responsibility for that freedom.
Exactly.
And I think that ties nicely into the vision and what you were talking about as well, or maybe vision or visualizing, because you said sometimes it's not clear. You can only see the next step or the first step. And so, do you see it? Do you feel it? Do you imagine it? What is it that you're seeing?
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Well, if I talk for myself, right? Because everybody is very different. So I'm a very feeling person. And the fun part is that, and feelings do change. And a lot of people say feelings are unreliable, because they are. And as a feeling person, what I've learned about myself is that I need to give myself the time to really feel the high, to really feel the low, and to find that balance in between, like what is it that I am okay with at this moment. And at the same time, I have a very strong intuition. And to listen to that intuition, to listen to those feelings, is I really need to give myself that time on my own to be with it. So the being part. And also shut down all the noise, because there's a lot of impatience around. And I find myself impatient as well when I have to take a decision, because it's like everything goes so fast, fast, fast. And at the same time, knowing that there is a lot at stake when taking a decision. I mean, huge decisions, right? I'm taking about big decisions, not like what am I eating for lunch, which also is a big decision sometimes. But it's giving myself that time to be, to feel, to know. And that's, for me, that's where the clarity becomes clear, the vision becomes clear, and the clarity is gained. What else? Yeah, I think that's...
And I really like how you phrased that: be, feel, and know. And the know came with such knowing as well. Like, it's almost like a part of you that is very determined. I just know when I know.
Exactly. Because I feel that's the pressure that we have from, I mean, this modern times or whatever, nowadays that we're living, right? The pressure that we need to know right away. And we need to be fast. We need to, so there is so much pressure. And I think the best gift that we can give to ourselves is that time, that silence, that being, right? And also covering your needs. What is it that you need without, as I also said before, like shutting down that noise from the outside. And I can see that also with my clients a lot, because a lot come having these feelings of stuckness and not knowing, right? I'm sure you also get this client where every question that you ask is like, I don't know, right? and I believe deep down that we all know. We all know. It's just, if you ask yourself, if you give yourself the time, if you really, and sometimes you might also not need coaches, if you have that deep connection with yourself, it's really to give yourself that time to find the answer.
And you said that feelings, that people say feelings are unreliable. And the way I have kind of learned about it, and the way I talk about it now, I suppose, is they're just data.
Exactly. It's
telling you something. It may not
Absolutely.
be actually right, but it may be right. But when you ignore it, then you're ignoring a source of your own intelligence.
Exactly.
And
Absolutely.
The more you can discern those feelings, because a lot of feelings are similar. So like excitement and fear can bring up similar feelings. And if you can discern those and make a nice little rainbow even of them, then you can start to feel into things in a bit of a different way. And I do think we're not really taught how to feel. And that's why when we do feel, we don't wait to know. We just stop it.
And
that's
it's hard
where we
sometimes to feel.
Yeah.
It is hard. It's hard to be with. That's where we get also a lot of things stored in our body, because we dismissed the feeling and being with it. And I know I do a lot of trainings on soft skills and emotional intelligence. And that's what I say usually as well, is data is information. Every emotion is a data. So take it as that, as an indication of what's going on for you at that moment. Maybe some value is not being met, or something needs to be changed. So see it as data. And yes, the data can change. It's a variable that can change. And at the same time, that's the truth for you at this moment. And as I said, it's for me, because I'm very much a feeling person, it's checking in at different points of those data and then making a synergy of that and finding what my truth is at that moment.
Yeah. And I think the thing about emotional intelligence that kind of makes me laugh a bit is most people think emotional intelligence is about thinking. Not about actually feeling. They leave out the emotional part of it. And actually, we need to feel to have emotional intelligence.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And Migena, let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, because I know this is something that you spend time talking about and working with. At the moment, I hear about it a lot more. And even in the last year, I think it's around a lot more. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of awareness around that. And honestly, I don't like the name imposter syndrome at all. But it's like that's how people have come to realize it nowadays. For me, at the bottom of it, it's self-doubt, which we all have, like this feeling of I'm not enough. They will figure me out. I'm just faking it, right? And until I make it, which has been, there are some TED Talks around it, which like, yeah, you need to fake it to make it. So at the bottom of it, it's really this feeling of doubts and this saboteurs and inner critics that are being loud at those moments and usually it happens when the status quo is threatened or is changed. When change is happening, that's when our inner critics or the self-doubt, it's the loudest. So when we start a new job and when we're going into a new project, on when we're doing something that is outside of our comfort zone, that's when the self-doubt or the imposter it shows up. And honestly, the biggest cure that I've found with it, it's a lot of self-compassion and it's a lot of acceptance at that moment that this is what's going on with me. And this is what it is now, and it's not going to last forever. It's because this thing is happening. That's why it's coming up. And really being very generous with your compassion with ourselves in the sense of what do I need right now? Right. And a lot of reminding also ourselves of the magnificent things that we have done to be there in the first place, right? That we deserve to be there, that we have done the work, that we deserve to be there. It's very beautiful. Like usually what I have, because of course I mean, that's why I'm working on it, and it's a niche because I've had a lot also as a new coach initially, and sometimes even now that I have years of coaching, still have this self-doubt and imposter thoughts of, oh, am I worth my fees? Do I really do what I preach? and all kinds of other things. So, and what really helps me sometimes, yes, taking that time to give that love and the compassion to myself, and also having a list of reading the testimonials, like all the good words that other people say that I could have never made up myself, because even sometimes when I read it, I'm like, that's not even possible. Like, that's not me. but it's funny, not because I can't make up, like 100 testimonials. So it's really nice to have those nice words being said, those acknowledgements, those championing words to oneself when we are at our lowest. So that's one of the tools that can be used.
Yeah, that reminder. And what a magnificent word magnificence is. Yeah. And remind that. I love that word because it sounds so huge that, yeah, if you can lean into that. And I think it's one of the best pieces of advice I got early on when I started to work for myself was to keep a folder with every single nice feedback that you get, so that when you are doubting yourself, you just go and read those things. Whether it's a client testimonial, a podcast listener, somebody who's read something, all of those things. And then you're like, woohoo, I can get going again. Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely. It does miracles to me. It does. It puts me in that, in that energy.
And there's something else about the doubt being necessary to Migena, I think, that something
it's because it's exactly, sorry to interrupt, I think it's because it really matters.
It's like because you care. You
really care.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I know I've done 100 of workshops also in person, and I can feel it every time I'm a little nervous. Like the night before, I would not sleep because I want everything to be like well and to give my best and to really transmit and for everyone to get the most out of it. And I know the people close to me is like, yeah, but you have done this so often. Like, are you still nervous? And I always say, it's not about being nervous. It's a mixture of excitement and nervousness at the same time. But it's because I really care and it matters to me. It's really important to me. So I want to show up at my best. and I want to do my best. So that's why it's nice that doubt sometimes also pushes you to learn more, to grow more, to do your best. So it's healthy doubt.
It is, and I find it's part of my ritual almost, or my routine, that feeling like, to have those kind of butterflies or whatever feeling you might have, or those thoughts are necessary. It's like an ingredient in my performance. And if I don't feel something like that, then I'm probably a bit off being my best.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess it's making friends with these different things, or understanding them, and then we only understand them if we feel them.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And emotional intelligence first starts with a self-awareness, right? And this is all about self-awareness.
It
like,
is.
where are we at this right moment?
Yeah, it is. And if we had more time, I would go deeper into that.
I'm loving this.
Time is up, believe it or not, Migena. And thank you for such a wonderful, thoughtful, kind conversation. And we covered a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
So Migena, if people would like to know more about you, to follow you, what's the best way of connecting with you?
I think I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So find me by my name, Migena Gjerazi, and I would love to connect with everyone.
I'll leave the details in the show notes. And you also co-host a podcast.
We do. I co-host with Sam, that you introduced at the beginning. It's our Untaming Femininity. Now it's the 5th season is about untaming leadership. So we talk about a lot of different leadership topics, and also we have guests talking about leadership, which I really love.
Brilliant. Okay, and I will put a link to that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Migena, thank you for your time. It's been lovely.
Oh, thank you, Susan. This has been so amazing. And you make it so easy to talk to, and it's so comfortable to be in it. And I love listening to all the episodes of your podcast. So I'm honored to be one of the guests. Thank you.
Thank you. And Zoom calmed down. Zoom stopped.
As soon as you told it to stop, it hurt. It's scary.
That's very strange.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the paths we traversed on today's episode. If something rang through for you, be sure to let me know. Or maybe you can share this with someone in your life who would benefit from listening too. And if you enjoy helping others, I'd be so grateful if you would leave a review, so that people who might also be curious about their own life beyond the numbers can discover this podcast too.